Do not be alarmed, Dr. Roanoke. This is an automated message from the O5 Council. We would like to congratulate you on your promotion. Your additional research data will value this Foundation more than you think. Thank you for your cooperation, Dr. Roanoke. We look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Off the record, none such diseases may be as insidious or horrendous as prion disease. Now, whether you refer to it as prion or prion is really kind of irrelevant. And if you are approaching people saying that they are incorrect for either, well, then I probably would say that you say Neanderthal wrong. So here we are. Back to prions, however, there are far-reaching implications for the disease as a whole, which can have detrimental effects on not just only your meat suit, but on the environment as well. You see, the largest issue with this disease is that it has no genetic coding. There is no DNA or RNA. It does not choose to infect your body or wish to replicate itself. It simply just is. A misfolded protein that largely for some reason is more capable of existing exposed to the mechanisms of your body or even outside of your body. Defying what we know about protein structures and the typical breakdown of them, this misshapen protein can enter your body through a variety of ways, but typically the exchange of bodily fluids or direct consumption of contaminated meat. There is no way to destroy it via conventional cooking methods, as heat that is used to actually cook food will not unfold this protein. Complete incineration is the method by which it must be contained, as anything short of an autoclave flame-broiled destruction will allow it to continue to exist. There are no medicines, no physical counter for it, and we as a species really don't know yet how to delay or cure this disease once it has entered the body. Because of this, containment of this protein is extremely important, and what's worse is we already know in Western United States right now a version is spreading known as chronic wasting disease. But that's exactly what it is in today's episode, in which we will be discussing SCP-008. To learn more about SCP-008, let's go into the log of what we do know and then discuss some possibilities of how it might exist and what the implications of that mean. Item number: SCP-008. Object class: Euclid. Special containment procedures. SCP-008 samples have been deemed Class 5 extreme biological hazards, and all related protocols apply. Incineration and irradiation measures will be deployed in the event of political or military action, which may result in this facility being dismantled. A power failure or zero communications from operatives or outside channels during any given 8-hour period. The quarantine period for operatives leaving the facility is 4 months. If a breach has occurred, incineration and irradiation measures shall be deployed. It should be the policy of all G2 sites to not prepare an evacuation procedure. The issue with prions, as mentioned previously, is the sheer fact that they can just simply remain in an environment. After entering the body of a person, deer, animal, whichever, it will slowly begin to work its way through the body. The reality is it has no specific direction that it's heading to. It's not trying to use cellular mechanisms to replace itself and build up more, it just exists to completely alter your cellular makeup and change you. Upon entering the cell of a person, ultimately, what will happen is it will come into contact with other proteins similar to it. What is the most bizarre aspect of this is upon making physical contact with these proteins, those will change actually into the shape of the protein, or at least the prion, by changing the way in which it is folded. This new protein structure now begins to build up in the body over time, but builds up pretty quickly. It becomes something of a runaway effect, with 2 becoming 4, 4 becoming 8, 8 becoming 16, and so on and so forth. While starting out slow at first, the first stages of infections with prions may go unnoticed. However, eventually it will make its way into the brain of the person or animal. Once here, you begin to see the mental ability begin to degrade with any animal. They will begin to wander, have difficulty walking, and in general, not appear to be in complete control of themselves. In humans, these traits are recognized as likely they are rushed to the hospital where symptoms progress rather quickly. Possessing the genetic variant, symptoms may progress quickly within about 2 years, leading to the expiration of the host. But with contracted prion disease, the average survival time is between 4 to 6 months. The horrible part about this disease is as symptoms progress, you're really not so much in the driver's seat of your own faculties as they begin to fail. fail. Rapidly developing dementia is a huge indicator that this disease is present within you as your mental state becomes more and more erratic, until the physical manifestations on your meat suit also begin to develop. Hallucinations, muscle stiffness, confusion, fatigue all begin to set in until eventually you can't communicate at all, and then you just kind of check out towards the end. What is taking place again is as the prions build up within your brain, this can lead to neural degeneration. As the neurons themselves become more and more built up with these prions inside of themselves, they will also cause neuron misfiring. Once the neuron cell finally meets its end under normal circumstances, the brain's immune system would actually just try to clear the waste away that had begun to build up. But as prions are released into the surrounding environment, they can't be unfolded and destroyed by enzymes that would normally be tasked to do so concerning the naturally occurring folded proteins. Because of this, the prions continue to build up and destroy more neurons as the weeks progress, and ultimately this will spell your doom to anyone who's genetically, predispositioned towards the misfolding of proteins, but also anyone who contracts the actual transmissible version of this disease. The prion diseases of Earth have naturally evolved here and have a terrible ending for anything that contracts it. And I personally would think that prion disease is terrible because it scares the living crap out of me because of its longevity and hardiness. It's not like, when you leave a virus outside, it deactivates because of UV light, or take something like bacteria entering your body, your immune system does have a shot at getting rid of it. The problem with prions are they're not alive. So there's nothing to deactivate, and any contact that they might have with your cells will change them irrevocably. So overall, 0 out of 10, I would not recommend catching it. But after leading to the expiration of specifically animals in the wild, as their body decomposes, this is like the worst part about this, they can literally leave behind like a pile of these prions on the dirt. And then what do plants like to do to decomposing animals? They like to grow there because there's nutrients in the ground. And as they grow, they end up pushing through and then carrying these prions on their leaf surface. But they can also do other things. The animal, prior to actually meeting their end, would leave droppings and saliva within the area containing portions of this misshapen protein, of which it's shown that if another from their species comes along and eats a leaf that it may have actually been salivating on, they too can catch it. Prions have been shown to be able to stay in the environment with no degradation for literal months, just sitting there, contaminating the soil, waiting to be eaten. You could almost compare it to like nuclear waste. It doesn't have a clear goal, it just is. This would indicate to me that SCP-008 is not of this Earth. As supported by the documents and the testing completed on it, the symptoms that arise much later, after the point where a normal prion disease would lead to the destruction of the person, SCP-008 continues to persist, having seized control of the body. These people would still be there, as been mentioned by SCP-500 curing it, but they are in a severely altered state. Description: SCP-008 is a complex prion, samples of which are stored in each of the known G2 sites. Research into SCP-008 is highly classified and primarily aimed at preventing research which may lead to the synthesis of SCP-008 in the distant future. Traits of SCP-008 prion include 100% infectiousness, 100% lethality, transmission through exposed mucous membranes and all bodily fluids, not airborne or waterborne. Symptoms of infection with SCP-008 manifest no more than 3 hours after exposure and include flu-like symptoms with a high fever plus severe dementia in later stages, coma onset approximately 20 hours after the first symptoms appear, 12 hours after noticeable dementia. Coma onset is considered onset of death. A period of sporadic cellular necrosis occurs, which comes to resemble gangrene. Surviving tissue assumes its original function and is highly resilient. Red blood cells greatly increase oxygen storage capacity, resulting in slower blood flow and increased muscle endurance and strength. Nervous and muscular systems are unaffected by total organ failure for several hours. Metabolism may decrease to extremely low levels, allowing the subject to survive over 10 years without nutrition. High blood viscosity results in negligible blood flow from a gunshot, puncture, or slashing injuries. Conditioned behavior, motor controls, and instinctive behavioral mechanisms are damaged, and cognitive abilities are severely retarded and erratic. Animals experience excessive brain necrosis and are inactive. Subject can adapt to its damaged nervous system, but is limited to basic physical activities including standing up, balancing on 2 legs, walking, biting, grabbing, and crawling. Subject will energetically move towards sights and sounds and smells associated with living humans. Subject will attempt to ingest living humans if physical contact is made. Neutralizing fully infected subjects requires significant cranial trauma. There is strong evidence to suggest that SCP-008 itself did not form naturally on Earth, since variants of similar complexity would have displaced much of the ecosystem. In 1959, a short collaborative effort between the USSR to locate G2 sites and eliminate SCP-008 was negotiated following their discovery. The status of SCP-008 in Russian custody since collaboration ended is unknown. The pathophysiology of SCP-008 disease progression at first would progress much like a standard prion disease, with the body activating the immune system to clean up its perceived invader. This would be largely unsuccessful, as the body does not have an enzyme capable of cutting and unfolding the prion, not to mention the time that it takes to get infected or at least have the infection progress is too quick for the body to effectively respond. As the other proteins fold and are changed to SCP-008, eventually this would lead to coma that we have seen with others who have the naturally occurring variant of prion. However, this is where the similarities end. As the body would normally be heading towards a dirt nap, SCP-008 takes a very strange turn, and this may indicate that it actually has extraterrestrial origins. Appearing to be a protein structure that is compatible with our body and able to change this prion is able to function in some capacity towards keeping cells running and maintaining the building blocks necessary for life. However, it would definitely appear that in some regards it is simply not compatible with the epithelial tissue, as gangrene would appear in the limbs. This would indicate also that the potentially rate of growth may actually affect these building blocks, and considering that the growth of the skin layer recovers extremely quickly and also forms new cells really quickly, this may be too much for this new form of prion to keep up with, thus the cells begin to degrade quickly. So the slower growing cells of the body, such as the muscle or even the non-growing cells of the body like the nervous system, do not suffer the same exact fate. While the nervous system would absolutely be damaged and affected, it would appear that the body is still capable of using the remaining functional nerve pathways to relay and transmit signals to the limbs to move. But because of this damage, the movement is less fluid than that of the unafflicted. We can see that the brain is also damaged to some degree based on how more instinctual drives begin taking over, such as consuming flesh of those around them. Now, humans will resort to cannibalism under extreme conditions, but it's typically not favored, and this is because of something that we have in our brain known as the hypothalamus. During times of extreme pressure, the hypothalamus would be overruled, and you will quite literally eat anything that's put in front of you. But this would mean that this area of the brain must be damaged, and also other areas such as the frontal lobe or cerebrum in general has become damaged or necrose. And likely this is a combination of both, possibly due to the meningitis of the early stages of infection when the immune system was putting up a fight, but also because of the naturally occurring dementia that accompanies all prion infections. This would leave a person in a state of animalistic drives, as really the only thing that would take place at this point is the need to eat and drink. What I find interesting about SCP-008 overall is its ability to have its metabolism slow down and almost the stagnation of its blood. Concerning the blood first, the hemoglobin is simply a protein containing 4 separate folded peptide chains. This makes them hydrophobic but able to transport 4 O2 particles per hemoglobin. Once the prion enters the blood and begins affecting the blood, the oxygen carrying capacity is said to increase greatly, which means that the hemoglobin may be altered. More binding sites for oxygen from the changing of hemoglobin shape would account for this. This, coupled with metabolism that is slower, would mean that the blood would not have to be pumped as aggressively around the body in order to saturate organs with oxygen. So how might the metabolism be slowing down? Well, to understand this, we have to look at the durability of a prion, but we also have to understand how the brain itself is affected. As a prion is a protein, and a protein is a building block of a cell, it may be entirely possible that as a result, the cell itself has become more durable. Because who's to actually say the protein structures that we have right now are the best fit for our cells and the ones that are going to do the best job? With more durable cells may come with it a less of a need for the body to move as quickly as it does just to sustain the system. ATP production could decrease at this point as the cells aren't really moving as fast and are less active due to the effect of the prion base. This would mean that it would require less oxygen than normal to function, and with better carrying capacity of the blood, this would mean that the cells would have plenty of oxygen around them in order to work. But this, coupled with the slow moving blood, would also affect the thyroid of a person. The thyroid is where metabolism is regulated, but it relies on chemoreceptors that read the blood in order to understand what is happening within the body. Well, with less information and less need to basically say, hey, we need more of this or we need more of that. Instead, it's receiving less input signals,
so metabolism begins to naturally slow down. But I think the best way to think about this is having like a large SUV with a small gas tank. You would be more frequently heading to the gas station to fill back up. A normal human body, by comparison with this new building block that has now infected their body, or just SCP-008, would appear a lot like the SUV. But with SCP-008 infection, it would be like having a small car with like half of it being a gas tank. This would allow for it to go further and for longer periods of time without having to refuel. As a result, everything in the body can move slower due to less metabolic constraints of the afflicted host, but also the sheer amount of nutrition and oxygen the body had at first. With this new reality of the body, the applications of SCP-008 are quite interesting. On the one hand, the after effects are quite beneficial to the host from a survival standpoint. Not having to eat for a decade and being able to exist in a variety of environments with more durable flesh and abilities would be of great interest to any organization or government entity wanting to equip potentially their soldiers. On the other hand, the mental degradation and mobility issues completely outweigh any type of benefit gained from this increased longevity. Should a method be found to bypass a stage where the nervous system experiences degradation with only some of the prior human abilities remaining, then this could prove to be the next stage in human evolution, having this presumed alien Prion incorporated into the human form. The issue is, however, this all goes back to the Prion being a building block of a cell. How do you convert the cellular foundation without changing the cell? Should this be discovered, then it would be a turning point for the human race in terms of abilities and longevity. However, for now, considering there is no way to control it and its ability to spread and potentially turn the entire human race into shambling masses, should an escape ever be mounted or an accidental exposure take place, to destroy the Prion, you must bathe the entire area in nuclear flames as to stop an outbreak event that we have seen previously.